problems being able to supply or purchase fuel cargoes for this country. And again, we have seen another letter that dated September this year, actually stating the financial issues that are plaguing Paria Trading Company. And one would remember that when these companies were set up, Paria Trading Company and Heritage Petroleum, they were touted by this government to be the new Petrotrin and the new success. And so far, we're not too sure about the success because Heritage Petroleum has not increased production as was promised by this government. As a matter of fact, their oil production has been very low over the last 4 years that they have been in existence. And Paria Trading Company, which has a monopoly to purchase fuel for this country and also to sell fuel throughout the Caribbean, is having financial problems with this government. And that begs another question. Who is really fooling who with these numbers that the Minister of Finance seems to project and the words that comes out of his mouth about the economy is now on a boom and is now on an upswing. And we are seeing very high energy prices in the world today. So it is not because of not because of lack of high energy prices. It's basically a lack of will by this government. It's a lack of production that has not taken place over the last 4 years by this government. No incentivization to our oil companies. So that our production in gas and oil has been the lowest in the past 18 years. So that, it really, the country really needs some answers from the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister. What is our real financial situation? Because if the country was booming, we would not be seeing headlines in the newspapers today, gloomy Christmas and financial woes situation at Paria, our only fuel company that purchases fuel. Now, we are coming out of a pandemic. If you look at the global industry, you look at the USA, I mean, their economy is literally overheating coming out of the pandemic. And one would have thought that we had very good revenues based on the Minister of Finance, that at least this Christmas we would have seen an uptick in the economy. But when you go to the supermarkets and so forth today, you hardly see people because I think because of the high cost of living and the high prices that are presently in our country in respect of basic food items. And we have two individuals, two other MPs tomorrow will touch a bit on that. And we would have seen yesterday coming out of the central bank report that our inflation is now on food prices 11.6%. And this is something that a couple of months ago, when in our debates in budget, when you were telling this country and we were telling the government that the numbers that they were saying about inflation, I think if my memory is correct, Minister Emil would have touted an inflation figure of maybe 5%, under 5%. And they were saying that we were doing well compared to the other countries in the world. And what they really do is that they literally hide the true numbers for this country. And then later on, you will see the actual number coming out. So, and we are seeing it in Paria, we're seeing it in Petrotrin, we are seeing it in every state organization that this P&M government controls here today. They hide the numbers. They hide the number. And the only number they cannot hide, and I know MP Saddam will talk about, is the murder rate as it exists today. And it is very alarming and scary. So those are the few things I wanted to bring to the nation here this morning about the financial impact that is happening in Paria. And we really hope that the Minister of Finance really give the financial resources that is required to Paria Trading Company so that the country and the citizen, we do not have a setback in getting fuel supplies for our nation. And I at this point in time, I also like to say before I pass over to MP Saddam that our condolences to I was called baby Alan's mother. It is a very sad state of affairs that happens over the last few days of that boy. It's an innocent child, and I want to say on behalf of the opposition and the honourable leader of the opposition, the Honourable Kamala Prasad-Bissessar, I agree with a headline I read. Please let us not judge the mother of Alan. please, because we really don't know what was the situation with her life. So let us not judge her, and let us have our hearts, our warmth, our love, our caring for her. And I'm hoping, and I know MP for Mayaro Russian Parry would be reaching out and would have reached out to her already. So again, before I turn over to MP Saddam, those are some of the things I just wanted to bring to the country this morning. I thank you. Saddam?
Thank you very much, MP David Lee, Chief Whip in the Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Good morning, everyone. I am Saddam Hussein, the Member of Parliament for the constituency of Baratari Sanwan. And this morning, I would like to speak to you, the members of the media, and those who are looking at us on our various social media platforms, on this very troubling issue of where our country is at in terms of the national security and the management of our national security apparatus. And as I speak to you this morning, I speak from a very heavy heart, because we have, in our very small Twin Island Republic, recorded murder number 582 for the year 2022. And I think that number, we really have to digest what that means. Trinidad and Tobago, in our history since our independence in 1962, has never recorded a murder toll as high as what we have seen in 2022. A murder toll of 582, with just about 2 more weeks again for the end of this year. And we have no hope that we'll be ending the year with this number, because we have seen the trend where we are recording sometimes 2 to 3 murders per day. And then on weekends, there are sometimes where there are very bloody weekends where we hear the numbers of 10 and 12 murders in such a small Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And our condolences go out to all of those families who would have lost their lives, the family members of those who would have lost their lives to the criminal element in our country. And as you open the newspaper this morning, you would see one headline from The Guardian: outrage, 2 more killed. And these are some very important issues that we have to raise here, because one of the murder that we see from just yesterday was the murder of Mr. Munan Harideo from Chaguanas. And what is telling about this particular matter is that when you read the Guardian article, that there was an attempt to break in the person's property previously, and there was no action taken by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And then yesterday at 2 a.m., Mr. Harideo would have lost his life to bandits. And that is very telling, because where this property is situated is a stone throw away from the Chaguanas police station. And this is where we are at in this country. Then I saw another headline again: delivery driver shot dead. Cops recover spent shell from TT regiment. Now, when you read this article, it says that the shells that were found in the murder scene would have belonged, based on the preliminary report from the forensic officials, would have had markings of the Trinidad and Tobago regiment. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I brought a private member's motion to the Parliament to discuss the government's failure to address crime and to condemn the government's performance when it comes to crime. And Minister Hines, at that time, I raised issues surrounding a SSA report in 2019, where firearms that are recovered by law enforcement were finding themselves back into the streets. And Minister Hines' response to that was, well, this has been happening for years, so it's really nothing new. No, that can never be the answer. It is what you are going to do about it to stop it. It is not that because it happened in the past or it continues to happen, that it's okay. No, because you have innocent people in this country losing their lives to firearms, gangs, and absolutely nothing is being done about it. According to government statistics, there are over 1,462 gang members in Trinidad and Tobago, operating from 134 gangs, with 12,000 illegal firearms on the street. So you know how many gang members there are. You know how many gangs are operating. You know how many illegal firearms are on the street. And you just provide these statistics in a vacuum and you don't tell us what the action plan is. Where's the performance? Where's the action plan? How many firearms are going to be recovered per day? Are you going to give an amnesty for persons to bring in illegal firearms as we have seen in other jurisdictions? Where is the plan to really arrest this crime situation? Because this Minister of National Security, Minister Fitzgerald Hines, is a clueless, total waste of time and failure. And I don't understand why the Prime Minister continues to give his utmost protection to this failure of a minister. He has proven to be one of the most incompetent ministers. Minister Hines has sat in the Parliament probably since I was in primary school, and I cannot even identify a single achievement of this man, who has served so many years in public life, and not a single achievement. Minister Hines has proven himself to be a complete waste of time. He is just sitting in that Parliament and in his ministry drawing a very big salary while our citizens are out there losing their lives, and then he will declare to the nation that it is not his job to make people feel safe. And that is what we must accept from a government. We cannot accept that from a government, because the primary responsibility of any government, especially in a democracy, is to ensure that your citizens are safe. Ensure your citizens are safe. And when you look holistically at the entire number, the PNM would have taken office in September 2015. And up to today, we're in December 2022 with 582 murders recorded for this year. When you tally each number from 2015 to 2022, over 3,574 persons lost their lives to murder under this government. 3,574 persons lost their lives to murder under this PNM government. And they feel comfortable about that. The Prime Minister is the chairman of the National Security Council. He is the chairman of the National Security Council. And you would have seen every single newspaper this morning. Court blocks PM. Court blocks Rowley. Gary gets his way. And what does all of this stem from, members of the media and those who are listening? This stems because the Prime Minister, as chairman of the National Security Council, sitting together with the entire council, would have initiated an investigation into a former commissioner of police. And then the Prime Minister went on a political platform and made an announcement that he wants to lay a summary of that particular report in relation to the former commissioner of police. Then, former Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith filed an injunction in the court preventing the Prime Minister from revealing that report in the Parliament, because he is alleging it's a breach of his right to natural justice. He wasn't given an opportunity to be heard during that particular report when it's being compiled, and also questioning whether or not the National Security Council has the power to even launch an investigation. Because at the end of the day, the National Security Council is a subcommittee of the Cabinet, which is responsible for policy. It is responsible for policy. It is not responsible for investigating anybody. We have something called the Doctrine of Separation of Powers in Trinidad and Tobago, where everybody must stay in their lane. The Parliament can only make laws, the judiciary is to interpret and apply the laws, the executive is to make policy. The police service is there for investigation, for prosecution, and all matters in relation to the criminal justice system in terms of bringing persons before the court and presenting the evidence. So what this entire thing about, this entire report and all these headlines really is that the government is now, they lost in court yesterday because Mr. Griffith was granted an injunction by the High Court judge. And now we saw a media release coming out of the Office of the Attorney General yesterday that an immediate appeal is to be filed in this matter. Well, this Attorney General is very familiar with appeals, both locally and here in Miami. And this particular matter, with respect to this appeal, is fighting now a former commissioner of police in order to lay a report. Why don't you have the same fight to fight the criminals in court? Why don't you have the same amount of enthusiasm to fight the criminals on the street through the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service? Why are you spending all of this money to pay lawyers to fight on a political issue? Because you have to understand, this is not a matter of national security being fought in the court. It is really a political issue that the Prime Minister is trying to fight to justify his statement that he made openly in public that Gary Griffith was his worst decision. Is that what he said?
Yeah, I think that's correct.
And this is what this entire thing is about. You are spending taxpayers' money for a political outcome. For a political outcome. Because the Prime Minister, through his own utterances, has indicated that he was part of the affair that caused the collapse of the former Police Service Commission that left this country without a Commissioner of Police while our murder rate was skyrocketing. And because there's a lack of leadership, in terms of a constant leadership in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service in the executive, it means that there will be a lack going to lower food prices because all of these things in terms of the cost of living contributes directly to the level of criminality in a country. And these are things that are backed up by several peer research literature that has been compiled over the years. And you see, the thing is, firearms and detection is really one of the biggest issues that is currently facing our country. Minister Stuart Young, when he was Minister of National Security, announced that there was about 190 illegal entry points in Trinidad and Tobago. And then last week we heard, during Prime Minister question time, the opposition raising a question with respect to the capability and the functioning of the Coast Guard vessels that they would have acquired. And the Prime Minister's response was, why you all are raising this? Why are you complaining about this? Why are you all exposing this? No, Mr. Prime Minister. We as the opposition have to hold your government account, especially you as the chairman of the National Security Council, when it comes to the management of the national security apparatus. Because if you have announced previously that there are 190 entry points, we don't manufacture guns in Trinidad, yet they're flowing through our borders. And now, when we ask you if the Coast Guard vessels are working, then you tell us don't raise that as a concern. I mean, the government, I think they gave themselves a B plus in crime fighting, but today I want to give them a BS in crime fighting. And you see, the other thing with respect to this entire debacle is that there's no leadership from the top with respect to national security, because the Prime Minister is absent. And every time there's one of the bloodiest weekends or bloodiest week in the country, you will hear these massive announcements. And the last one we heard quite recently was that there's a crime is going to be declared as a public health crisis. Well, what has come of that? What has come of that? Where's the report? That announcement was made months ago. Where is that? Are we still going to determine or deem crime as a national health crisis? Nobody knows. Even the government doesn't know. And there are other issues that I can raise, but we are pressed for time this morning in terms of we have at 1:30 our parliament sitting, and before that parliament sitting, we have to file various matters before the sitting in terms of for it to be qualified. But to members of the media, as I close, I just want to say that we are currently in one of the most violent times in our country's history. Now is a time where there's a bit more economic activity in terms of person shopping for the Christmas season and the New Year season. But I just want to urge citizens out there to please exercise extreme caution. The criminals are lurking. The government has failed to keep us safe. So it is within our own rights now to ensure that we, in fact, can do what we can as individuals to keep ourselves safe, because the government has completely fallen down on the job. So I thank you very much, and we will be now taking questions for those who may have.
Thank you, Saddam. Before we get questions from the media that they would have sent, let me just put all things in context here. Our press conference this morning really and truly is to keep highlighting issues that traverse our country and are very, I would say, very troubling. So, for example, it's more than troubling. You would have heard from MP Saddam. Today we have reached 582 murders. That is a troubling, startling, fearful situation that is going throughout our country. And the reason we believe, and even the general public believe, that murders are happening on a daily basis, because the people who do these crimes, these murders, feel that nothing will come out of it, that they won't be caught. They won't be caught. And that's why you see it so rampant in our country, because when last you have actually heard that a murder has been solved, right? Over the weekend, or I think it was Sunday, we saw I will use the word execution, or the hit on a Chinese couple somewhere in the Wallerfield area. So that the crime touches every one of us in our society, whether you're in the higher echelons or the elitist group, the middle class, and even the low end of crime is impacting every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. Before I turn over to the questions, I just want to put in context, my pet peeve is the shutdown of the petroleum refinery. Again, and the whole situation in our energy sector. On Friday, when I asked the Prime Minister about what is the state of the petroleum refinery, and in one of the responses, I want to quote the Prime Minister. On Friday, I asked, and the Prime Minister's response to me on Friday, it was the government coming out of the refining business in Trinidad and Tobago. The owner of the refinery, this is a quote from the Prime Minister, the owner of the refinery has come out of the refining business. The opposition wants to tell the Prime Minister the real owners of the refinery is the people of this country. And we were never consulted when your government, when your committee or yourself took the decision to shut down this refinery of Trinidad and Tobago, which has been our life, which has been our crown jewel. No discussions were held with the people of the Trinidad and Tobago when you decided, your government, just like Carney, decided to shut down an industry that threw thousands and thousands of individuals on the breadline. So I want to put that in context before I hand over the questions. And I now ask if there are any questions from the media.
We have some questions coming in. The first one is, there have been questions about the profitability of heritage raised last year. Given the new revelations about Paria, do you think that the restructuring of Petrotrin has proven to be not as profitable as the government is making it seem?
Well, the government seems to hide with their numbers. And you have three companies. You have Heritage, you have Paria Trading, and then you have a holding company called, I think, Trinidad and Tobago Holding Company, which all these three companies are supposed to roll up into that holding company. And that holding company financials have been deferred. I think the last financial that was released was in 2019, and that showed a loss in that particular company. So that the success of Heritage and Paria is a standalone, you might on paper, but when you roll it into the holding company and you take everything as one, it is not a success, as this government is trying to fool the country by the closure of Petrotrin.
Minister Imbert has said that the situation regarding Paria has been resolved now. Are you confident that this issue will not arise again?
Well, what Minister Imbert has not said to this country, if he might have solved the issue back in September. But what the country needs to know from Minister Imbert, would Paria Fuel Trading Company have financial issues continuing? And do they have financial issues today? Are they getting the revenues that are promised to them, that are owed to them from this government, from subsidies, etc.? And one would have seen in the letter that Chairman George was saying that ships, cargoes that were destined for Trinidad had to be held up because they could not leave because the cargoes weren't being paid for by Paria Fuel Trading. Unless you pay for it, their credit line is very, very thin, and they would have had to pay first before the cargoes were released. So we are asking Minister Imbert today, give the country the comfort that Paria Fuel Trading does not have any financial situation to meet our fuel, our energy needs as a country.
Regarding the Commission of Inquiry into Paria, recently Mr. Lynch has expressed concern that Paria may be trying to stall the inquiry by doing massive data dumps.
Yeah.
Does the opposition have a comment on that?
Yeah, I have been following this Commission of Inquiry closely. And every day whenever they're on, as a member of Parliament for Point-a-Pierre, I have an interest in it. I would like to see justice being done to the divers who lost their lives. To answer your question, throughout this whole Commission of Inquiry, you would have seen Commissioner Lynch pleading through the attorney Gilbert Peterson to get information from Paria. And what Paria, we have seen in his latest escapade, is that they have now loaded up the Commission of Inquiry with hard copies of information, I think, over the weekend. And that's why yesterday you would have seen that the Commission of Inquiry was cancelled based on the dumping of information in a haphazard way to the Commission of Inquiry. And it there adds again, what is Paria hiding? That they don't want to be very open with this Commission of Inquiry because the country is looking on. And I think from what I have seen, the country is aghast of what is really happening from the individuals who played a major role in the Paria, out of the Paria company trading in this situation with the divers.
With regards to your comments about the Petrotrin refinery, Petrotrin has been, the refinery has been closed for about 4 years now. How realistic at all is it for the refinery to be open at this point?
Well, November 30th, a couple of weeks ago, would have actually made it 4 years that the refinery has been closed. And the longer the refinery remains closed, it is really turned into really scrap iron. And we had always said, the opposition had always said that if you wanted to shut down the refinery, what you could have done is restructure the refinery and keep it as a going concern, and it would have had more value as a going concern to find a proper buyer for the refinery. Now that you have shut down the refinery, because remember they had said they were shutting down the refinery was never even going to be sold from the late Franklin Kahn, who was the Minister of Energy. And then with a change of heart, this government said that they'll put the refinery on for sale. So for 4 years now, literally the refinery has not been have not gotten a buyer. I think the closest buyer with the best deal from what we have seen would have been OWTU, and we all know that has fallen through. And the longer the refinery remains closed, is the worse off it will be to try and sell it.
Mr. Hussein, as you know, Acting Commissioner Jacobs has gone on leave for 30 days. We have a new acting commissioner right now, Ms. Christopher. We haven't heard from her so far with regards to what the TTPS intends to do over the Christmas period to stem the high crime rate we're seeing. Do you think that she should perhaps come out and make a public statement?
With respect to that, Ms. Christopher is acting in the position of Commissioner of Police. I think the buck stops with the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister must be the one to come out and tell the country what is his plan going forward with respect to keeping our citizens safe, not only just for Christmas, but going through into the new year. What plans are we really going to see from the government to fight crime? The buck stops with the Prime Minister when it comes to keeping our citizens safe. She's the head of the National Security Council.
Does the opposition have a comment, or do you have a comment on the day of prayer that was held on Sunday by the Prime Minister with the intention of reducing the current crime rate?
Yeah, God helps those who help themselves.
Recently, social activist Victor Roberts claims that his march against crime was not granted by TTPS. However, on the same day on Sunday, there was a march against crime that took place in Port of Spain that seemed to have the approval of the Prime Minister's office. The TTPS is saying that Mr. Roberts got oral permission to have his march. He's denying that happened. Do you have a comment on that?
I am unfamiliar with the other march that would have taken place in Port of Spain, but with respect to Mr. Roberts, I followed the comments closely what happened in that matter, and I don't think the TTPS has produced an iota of evidence that in fact permission was given, whether it be a call log or these matters are really prescribed by law and there should have been written consent being given, because if Mr. Roberts was on his way during his march and some police officer stops him, he can't say, well, X officer called me on the phone and they told me I can do this. No, things must be done properly, especially when it comes to these matters. But that takes us into a different conversation in terms of a breach of one's constitutional rights. And I think Mr. Roberts has given an indication that he is going to ventilate this issue in the courts in Trinidad and Tobago.
You mentioned the Coast Guard vessels. The Minister of National Security has said that the opposition's comments about those vessels are jeopardizing national security. How would you respond?
I think the incompetence of the Prime Minister and the Minister of National Security has jeopardized our national security.
A few weeks ago, we know that there was some issues regarding the scanners on the ports. Does the opposition have a comment about the recent action taken by TSTT to take the state to court over millions of dollars in unpaid CCTV fees?
Yeah, so I'll take that question into two. With respect to the scanners at the port, those scanners at the 1,500 cameras, do we now trust them to manage 2,500 additional cameras? It all stems from they don't know what to do when it comes to the management of the CCTV apparatus, because they would have dismantled the National Operations Center that was set up under the previous government led by Mrs. Prasad Bisesa. And those again were all political moves that now has implications with respect to how safe our citizens are through the management of the national security apparatus. And on that topic of the CCTV cameras, the 1,500 odd cameras that we currently have, it seems as though the state is not paying TSCT, who is the service providers for those cameras, because TSCT, as you rightly pointed out, in fact indicated its intention to take the government to court to recover $751.8 million, That's over roughly $752 million. That is outstanding when it comes to CCTV cameras. But yet, you would see that the lawyers that are very closely affiliated with the PNM are getting hundreds of millions of dollars in fees. You're seeing the friends and families and financiers of the PNM benefiting from government contracts. But when it comes to items and national security apparatus to keep our citizens safe, you have arrears of $752 million. It really shows where the priority of this government is.
You mentioned the fact that we will most likely record over 600 murders this year.
Yeah.
The Prime Minister said that if it were not for the policies of the government, this would actually be a much larger figure. How would you respond to that?
PS.
Let me just add to that one, that question that the Prime Minister said if they weren't in power, it would have been the evidence is there. Whenever the PNM government controls this country, the crime rate and murder rate is always out of hand. That's a fact. The numbers are there. So that I just want to add a little bit to what Saddam had said before we close. The customs and excise in respect to scanners and containers an issue. One would have to remember that before Joint Select Committee, I think the acting controller of customs had said that they were under-resourced, understaffed. And one has to ask the question, has Minister Imbert, the Minister of Finance, who has direct control over customs and excise because it falls under his ministry, and with this PNM government has always wanted to bring into being the Revenue Authority, which would bring the customs and excise and BIR under one umbrella, and the whole issue of staffing, of how you treat with the current custom officers and staff and the current BIR staff members had been an issue, and they would really, one has to ask if they have been starving the present customs and excise for resources, especially staffing in catering for when they do move under this Revenue Authority umbrella, that they would have less issues of getting rid of the staff and keeping who they want. So I think that, in my view, could have been one of the reasons by the Minister of Finance. And really and truly, any day, this government does not tell this country, doesn't tell the people the true picture is what is happening in our state of affairs in our country. And before I end, I want to talk about the CCTV cameras, in my view. And Saddam talked about is really about priorities, right? And something as simple. If this government wanted to solve crime, they would have ensured that CCTV cameras would have been one of the main tools that they would have used in fighting crime in our country, because our country is not a huge island, and if you really, this government under this PNM-led Prime Minister Rowley, if they really wanted to solve crime, for a minimum, they would have ensured that the CCTV camera system in our country was working optimal. So that really and truly, that is a question that the country has to ask this government. Are they willing, or do they want to solve crime in our country? And I leave it there. And before I close, I want to say, I want to second what MP Saddam says. We are going into our Christmas season. We literally have a few more days. Christmas is celebrated next week. and to be safe, be on your guard as you traverse the country, as you do your shopping and so forth. Please be safe on behalf of the opposition leader, the Honorable Kamala Prasad Bisesa, and all members and all parliamentarians for the United National Congress. I thank you.
And season's greetings to members of the media and those who are looking on our social media networks.